Take a look at money matters now. World markets continue to be plagued by renewed concern about further interest rate hikes in the wake of supportive economic news. As a result, global markets rebounded mildly, but the JSE closed weaker and the rand remains under some pressure. We're now joined by Bianca Botes, Executive Director at Citadel Global, to give us her take on the markets and the latest economic data. A happy Friday to you. Let's talk about the movement of the rand this week and what has driven that movement, and when was the last time it touched the lows we've seen this week?
Good afternoon to you and your viewers today. Currently, we've seen the rand actually hold its ground quite nicely. We've seen it come back down from about the 18 rand 50 mark to trade at about 18.18 where we are at the moment against the dollar. And that's driven by mostly two factors at the moment. So first and foremost, optimistic growth coming out of China. That's really supporting commodity-driven currencies such as the rand. And secondly, we've also had a slurry of Fed speeches this week. And in particular, one stuck with markets where Fed President Bostic actually made a comment where he said, yes, we do have to continue hiking interest rates, but that the pace would be slow and steady, and that the Fed will continue to monitor market fallout to make sure that they are not encumbering economic growth too much in their effort to rein in inflation. So it will be a balancing act between making sure that inflation's being brought down to the levels that they want it to be at, but also making sure that it's not done at a pace that will actually do more harm than necessary to economic growth. And markets really responded well to that, assisting the rand to regain some ground.
Okay. The S&P Global South Africa PMI increased to 50.5 in February 2023 from 48.7 in January. The latest reading signaled a slight pickup in the health of the private sector economy as output improved after 5 straight months of contraction. How much of the slow growth has to do with load shedding?
I think one would be really naive to think that load shedding is not impacting on the manufacturing sector. It is a very, very electricity intense sector, and it will of course have its impact. In a survey that was done in January and published in Engineering News, they actually surveyed quite a few participants in the manufacturing industry, and these participants said that they start feeling the impact of load shedding from about level 4 upwards. They also indicated that they are making severe efforts to actually move away from electricity supplied by Eskom and looking at alternatives to ensure that they have production output on an ongoing basis. The other thing that's actually really beneficial to South African manufacturing at the moment is the reopening of the Chinese economy. And we can actually see that uptick in output in South Africa based on that coming online of the Chinese economy, if you want to put it like that. So yes, massive impact from load shedding on the South African economy as well as production. But there are also other contributing factors such as supply chain, demand from the rest of the world, and how quickly we can actually get our inputs that we need to put into some of the things that we manufacture locally.
Sure, so it's not that straightforward, but we've got other things going for us, as the Reserve Bank Governor Lesitsha Kganyago points out. He's saying to the developed world they must look to emerging markets like South Africa for how they can manage inflation and interest rates. Does he have a point, and what is he talking about?
Absolutely. When we start looking at the dynamic of emerging markets, emerging markets has experience in dealing with price pressure, inflation, higher interest rates, when compared to developed markets where they actually have a near zero interest rate policy for a number of years for now. So it really comes down to experience. How experienced are central bankers in dealing with inflation, dealing with price pressure, knowing when to start hiking rates, how aggressively to hike rates? And you will recall that South Africa was actually one of the first countries to start hiking rates coming out of COVID, looking towards inflation. So a really proactive response from emerging markets compared to developed markets. And I think the message that he's trying to get across is to actually lean on your peers who has more experience with dealing in these matters and actually taking a book out of emerging market or a page out of emerging markets book when it comes to dealing with things that we are accustomed to dealing with.
Alrighty, let's look into the week that will be. We're expecting on Tuesday the fourth quarter GDP data to be released by Stats SA. What are you looking forward to the most?
Currently, the medium-term growth outlook has improved moderately. National Treasury is also now projecting that real economic growth for 2022 will come in at 2.1%. And it's actually expected to return to pre-pandemic levels in 2023. GDP growth is expected to average at 1.8% over the next 3 years. And currently for the fourth quarter GDP, we're expecting it to come in at 2.2%, which is actually a notable increase when we start comparing to the somber numbers that we saw throughout 2020 and 2021.
Thank you very much to Bianca Botes, Executive Director at Citadel Global.